Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Our guest today is Cody. So Cody, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do.
Currently live in Orange County, California, although not for much longer. And I am the co-CEO of an e-commerce growth agency called Kynship. And we service 8 to 9 figure e-commerce brands, implement a system designed to financially beneficial their business.
So I'm just curious, obviously e-commerce has been around for some time and booming. So like as of now, but I'm curious kind of how you got into this space in the first place.
Previously starting Kinship, I was working internally at a brand called Kalo. They grew 0 to 40 million in 3 to 4 years-ish. And I was on the marketing team there.
And then what year was this? Like when you were there?
2014 to 2018.
So after 2018, and then you left and you started like your own company.
Yeah, January 2019, we started Kynship.
And I guess for you, obviously you had the experience, growing a brand, way back when, but what kind of need do you see in the market to decide to start your own business?
Honestly, the need came out of not necessarily a need, but more so a desire that came from feeling capped at my own opportunity of growth. I wasn't even really thinking about starting my own business really at the time. It was kind of just like, well, I go to a bigger, better brand, and the opportunity kind of just fell in my lap, and the idea kind of just came to me, and it became like the best idea. And it was checked all the boxes for what I wanted out of my career in terms of autonomy, freedom of calendar, the ability to impact and lead people, and we've hired 15 employees at this point. Yeah, so those are some of the things that were important to me.
That's awesome. And then I'm curious in terms of like the brands that you work with, like when you're kind of prospecting or having conversations, like what do you kind of look for? Like, what qualifies a brand to work with you guys that would be a good fit to help scale by working with your agency?
Yeah, honestly, after the sales process, I think if they're bought in on the system that we're implementing, I always like to say that we offer a system, not a set of services. So it's not like a la carte, like a buffet of the brand picks what they want. But when you sign on with Kynship, you get a system that's designed to benefit the finances of the business ultimately. And that's what business is about, is a numbers game, a finance game. Obviously there's certain like revenue tiers and certain levels of spend that make it sweeter than not. But it's usually like, that's the main thing that I'm looking for. I'm looking at the operator and looking at some of those like qualitative metrics that are hard to assess just from like versus like how much they're spending on Meta, for example. Sure. But it's just more so experience and gut feel.
And then in terms of like brands that are just starting from zero, like do you recommend that, like, do you kind of work with brands like that too, if they have the budget, or are you looking for brands that have like a little bit more of, proof of concept behind? Yeah, a
little bit more proof of concept. They have some established product market fit and things of that nature. We have worked with brands, kind of getting off the ground, but usually they have funding.
Right. And then I guess in terms of products, right? Because obviously there's so many different verticals within D2C. So are there certain verticals that you kind of like focus more on or have worked with more like over the years?
Not really. All the popular ones, I guess you could say. Food and beverage, health and wellness.
So do you kind of look for like products that have, certain AOV, things like that? Because obviously like with ads and things like that, there's levels of profitability where it might make sense, where it might not make sense. Like, what do you kind of look for from that standpoint?
Yeah, great question. Not obvious to any of the listeners, we audit the business from like a financial like P&L perspective. So after that, then it actually tells me the whole picture on what we need to do.
For sure. And then in terms of, because you've worked with obviously many brands and you've helped them scale. So I'm curious in terms of like some of the things that are kind of working right now. Obviously back in 2018, I'm sure it was way different than now, but are there certain, whether it's like a UGC static influencer, what are you kind of like certain platforms that you're kind of working with more, where you think that there's more value today in 2025 compared to even back in 2018?
More value now compared to back then. I'm not necessarily sure. I'm still bullish on Meta. What's always worked on Meta is continuing to work, and that's broad targeting, that's leaning into the machine learning system, that's letting the bid be the governor of your spend, not your budget. Yeah, like it's the boring take. It's not like this hot like TikTok shop, but it's what's proven to be the most incremental, and that's proven at this point.
For sure. And then do you feel like even nowadays, I mean, do you see more so like static ads or UGC influencer? What kind of content, or is it kind of like a mix across the board in terms of just testing with this broad targeting?
Definitely a mix, depending on the brand, depending on the competitive landscape. Yeah. I mean, that goes into like how we think about creative testing at large is just you want as much diversity as possible because you don't know. I mean, you can obviously work on historicals, but you hold that loosely.
For sure. And then I guess you were saying also earlier, right, that like if a brand's just, I'm just getting started, they could work with you guys just depending on budget. So how much, like for somebody that wants to get started in meta ads, right, to work with you guys for it to make sense? Like how much would they have to be spending per month to even go and say, okay, like it's worth trying this out and seeing like what's possible?
It varies. Like I said, we take brands on that probably are lower than what they would think that it would make sense. And then we have brands that are spending 7 figures a month. So
Right.
I don't have a minimum floor.
Right. So even if a brand's spending like 5,000 a month, it could be something where it's like it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of like, how do you kind of measure that attribution, right? Because all these channels in a sense are intertwined, right? You have retail, you have Amazon, you have TikTok. It's like, how are you guys like kind of looking at that? Because even if you're running ads on Meta, right? People sometimes might go on Amazon, they might go in the store and buy where it's not exactly attributed. So how do you guys kind of work and measure that overall growth and success like of the brand?
The only attribution that never lies is your bank account.
Right.
So we're leveraging everything back up to Shopify.
For sure.
So we'll set targets based on, new customer across the channels, but each of these channels behave differently. But we want to make sure that new customers has a specific target versus returning customers. And yeah, I truly believe like you should be looking at your website and Amazon as the exact same thing. But speaking of Meta and Amazon, Meta is incredibly impactful to Amazon. So you need to be looking at both. And a lot of brands, agencies don't.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's all sort of intertwined. And I guess like, obviously now in 2025, as we were talking about, like things have changed. Like we were saying, I mean, Meta has stayed the same, but, things have gotten more challenging. So like, are there certain, things that you're doing now that's different or is kind of like top of mind, I guess, in terms of even creatives like AI, things like that, that's kind of crushing it more for some brands? If you can kind of just like, dive into some examples of, case studies or brands that you've worked with and helped scale.
For sure. I mean, all of our case studies are on our website. The ones that are published and fully detailed, they're very long. But yeah, a lot of times I feel like case studies are not helpful in the sense that they give you vague percentage lifts and they all sound very, very large. Like all the ones on our website are very, very large because no one has context between before and after. All I'll say is like the primary ways that we're helping brands is the system by which we get very much data driven and financially oriented, integrated into the actual behind the scenes of the business. So we have full visibility in the entire P&L. So sitting in that seat, now we can run your ads much more effectively rather than me just trying to make your Facebook dashboard look as sexy as possible. And I think there's a lot of problems with that personally.
For sure. And how do you see kind of like AI coming into the picture now in 2025?
Yeah, spicy topic. I would say AI, if you're not using it, it's kind of like I'm preferring to go to the library instead of using the internet like back in the day.
Right.
AI is definitely like you need to be utilizing it for sure. The static AI creation is going to be probably eliminating a lot of jobs, to be honest, in terms of like graphic designers, web dev, developers, like all these different things. I do think that AI lends itself to a market where the consumer is not going to know what is real and what is like actually AI generated. So therefore, actually the only way that people are going to know is if ugly ads stand out, truly not polished creative stands out, which I think lends itself to the service we offer, but also brands are doing this and should be doing this, which is influencer seeding, sending out product to influencers, letting them post organically without any sort of request and letting them genuinely interact with the product and post on their own free will, because that leads to naturally authentic content, one, but also content that's not cookie cutter. Say these 3 things, be in this shot, use this hook, etc. So I think that's one of the things that AI is definitely doing in the marketplace is people are going to be craving, how do I know that this is not AI generated? They're going to be craving like the most raw, shaky, blurry photos, videos as possible. Now, you could say like AI could probably generate that too, and people will probably try to take advantage of that. But until that point, there's still people are like the end consumer is not dumb. So they're still going to be able to discern. It's going to be a lot harder, but exactly to my point. Like that's why brands need to be doing influencer seeding increasingly so. They always should have been doing that, but moving forward, it's definitely crucial.
So how do you find those right partners, right? Because there's so many influencers and so many people out there that want to create content. So in terms of sending out product, like how do you make sure that, hey, like this is going to be a good fit for the brand?
I mean, you should know who your customer is. So find influencers that look like your customer.
Right.
I mean, it's really that simple. It's like, if you don't know who your customer is, you got more problems than influencer seeding, one. But two, okay, I'm a food and beverage brand. I know that these people, like these are my target personas. Go find influencers that, speak to those target personas. And there's like a bajillion tools out there that will help you do this. So it's not as hard as when I was working internally at a brand and I literally had Instagram as my only tool. And that was like 2014, right? So there's so many tools to get quantitative metrics and qualitative metrics. You're going to have to know that yourself.
And like, what do you think about, obviously we were talking briefly like about TikTok. You're saying obviously Meta is like the most effective, but TikTok has created this kind of like, influencer game of affiliate marketing, things like that. So what does that kind of look like, just from your perspective? I mean, do you see that like as a trend that's going to continue on Meta and like other platforms, or like, what is your, thoughts there?
Yeah. I mean, I think, Instagram's copied Snapchat and TikTok at this point, Meta, right? Like Zuckerberg. I think it definitely creates a network of people that are looking to create captivating content, and that's good. Like the more and more, and the ability, like the For You page was really impactful for the entire algorithms of all these social platforms.
Right, exactly. So obviously now we're in Q2 here of 2025. So what are some of your biggest goals and objectives for the rest of this year?
For Kynship?
Yeah.
I can't say those publicly, but scale, baby.
Yeah, scale. Take on more clients, help more
continue.
clients.
Yeah, continue to help our clients and work with the right clients. That's mostly what I'm interested in.
For sure. That's awesome. So I guess if you could go back in time, right, back to 2018, 2019, when you first got started, what would you say is like the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew?
I would say just keep evolving. Like, don't get lost in the sauce of, one particular client. I think for us that manage agencies, it's very easy to get tied to performance, tied to what this client opting out, this client saying X, Y, and Z, this client or this prospect not signing on with you. Like, I think it's just, if you could see the bigger picture and see like how much Kynship alone for us, we've evolved a ton. Like when we launched, we started out as an influencer marketing agency, just doing influencer seeding, and paid media was very much in the background. We were doing it, weren't requiring it. I don't need to go through the whole evolution of Kynship, but I would just say like, it's all going to work out. Don't get lost in the sauce, see the bigger picture, be patient. Those are some of the things I would tell myself.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that's great advice. And, it's awesome. I feel like any successful entrepreneur is like a lot of it is iterating, pivoting, all these things, because if you're just going to do things the, same way and not adjust based to what people are asking for and, market changes, you're not going to be successful.
Absolutely. Nailed it.
Awesome. Cool. So like if somebody watching this wanted to reach out to you, do you mind sharing your website, social media, I guess best ways to get in contact?
Yeah. Website, KYNSHIP, Kynship.co. And then I'm everywhere, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm on the platforms, putting out content, part of my job. So yeah, wherever is easiest for you, shoot, even YouTube. I barely have anybody there, but whatever is easiest for you to find, Cody Wittick, I'm here to help.
So, well, Cody, thanks so much for your time today.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Dan.